His hand!
Are you shitting me? You don't have any powers?
Just incredibly yes.
Even though the Mortal Kombat sequel is still almost half a year away, around 5 months left with the movie dropping in May, we already know a surprising amount about the story. There's more than enough information to start doing a full breakdown of how the plot will unfold and how each character arc is going to play out. That's why I decided to do separate videos for every new character showing up in the sequel, taking it slow and really digging into the details. First up is SHAO KAHN, and later I'll get into the others like Noob, Quan Chi, Kitana, and more. But today I want to focus on one of the most hyped characters in the entire live-action lineup, and honestly maybe the most anticipated one of all, SHAO KAHN played by Martyn Ford. Back when they first announced casting for SHAO KAHN, everyone immediately started guessing who it could be. There were rumors about Dwayne Johnson, hints that they might go with a pro wrestler, basically someone huge and intimidating. And in the end, they didn't really go far from that idea. They cast Martyn Ford, who's known first and foremost as a bodybuilder and only later transitioned into acting. You've probably seen him in franchises like Undisputed or Fast and Furious, where he popped up as that massive, scary presence on screen. And honestly, this is pretty much the perfect choice for a role like SHAO KAHN. This is a villain who has to be terrifying just by standing there, and Ford does that without saying a word. For me, this is straight up perfect casting. Fans were hoping for something exactly like this, because SHAO KAHN is one of those characters where you can't just find any actor and make it work. You need insane height, insane muscle mass, and that natural, intimidating vibe. What's wild is that even with his already ridiculous size, Martyn Ford still trained even more for the role. He said himself that he wanted to get even bigger, especially making his shoulders wider. Recently, a new photo dropped from the set, where you can see a dialogue moment between SHAO KAHN and Adeline Rudolph's Kitana. The scene itself doesn't really give away any plot details, but if you know the canon, it already says a lot. SHAO and Kitana's arcs are deeply connected, especially her origin and how she eventually turns toward Earthrealm. In many ways, that entire path exists because of SHAO KAHN. What's basically confirmed for the sequel is that we'll see SHAO invading Edenia. He straight up attacks the realm. The trailer already showed a few quick shots of him defeating King Jerrod played by Desmond Chiam. The king falls, the emperor rises, and Edenia gets conquered. This moment will likely serve as SHAO KAHN's true introduction to the audience. Most likely this will be the very first scene he appears in. There's a good chance it plays out as a flashback, showing how SHAO KAHN conquers other realms, and at the same time setting up why Kitana has such a personal vendetta against him. All of this lines up perfectly with Mortal Kombat canon. As Emperor, SHAO KAHN rules Edenia and commands not just an army of outworld warriors we haven't fully seen yet, but also the Tarkatans. However, his most dangerous weapons are his sorcerers. Shang Tsung survives the events of the first movie, and now he's joined by Quan Chi, played by Damon Harriman. You already know how broken this duo is. Having both Shang Tsung and Quan Chi on your side is basically a cheat code, and with Quan Chi involved, that opens the door to revenants and resurrected warriors. I'll go much deeper into that when I do a separate video focused entirely on Quan Chi. As for SHAO KAHN himself, he was teased all the way back in the first movie. It was obvious that if the film performed well and got a sequel, it was only a matter of time before Shao showed up and before we found out who would play him. In the first movie, we even saw a mural of SHAO KAHN in Raiden's temple. That version of the design was a bit different from what we're getting now. The helmet looked more game accurate with gold tones, brighter accents, longer and more detailed horns, and more vibrant armor pieces. The mask itself looked rougher, almost like it was made from a skull, giving it a more classic feel. The final design we see in the sequel is much more minimalistic. Compared to the first version, they toned things down. The horns are shorter and less detailed, the helmet is simpler, and it now resembles traditional Japanese samurai helmets. The material of armor is darker too, with a very moody color grade in the footage we've seen so far. Because of how dark the lighting is, it's actually hard to clearly see the shape of the mask in detail. For some fans, this new look even vaguely recalls Shredder from Michael Bay's Ninja Turtles movies. There's definitely a similarity there, but this version of Shao is clearly going for a cleaner, more stripped down style. What I really like though are the glowing red eyes. They give him this demonic presence that instantly sells him as a final boss level threat. The mask itself is a bit controversial, but from certain angles, especially in profile, it actually looks pretty cool. We've also seen his design more clearly through the Mortal Kombat 1 skins released to tie in with the movie, which were supposed to drop when the sequel was originally planned for last year. On those skins, the mask looks a bit flat, so it'll be interesting to see how it translates in motion on screen. Either way, Martyn Ford is going to carry this role no matter what. This is one of those casts where it honestly doesn't matter what he's wearing, he's still terrifying. Just look at any movie he's been in, or even his real-life pics, the guy looks unreal. I have zero doubts about the casting itself. The only thing I'm still not completely sold on is the costume, but we'll see how it feels once we actually watch him move and dominate scenes in the movie. With the design more or less clear, there's another important detail we already know for sure. Shao Kahn will get his iconic Wrath Hammer in the movie. We've already seen a fairly detailed look at it, and honestly, there's not much to complain about. It's a massive, brutal-looking weapon, the kind of thing that feels like it can flatten anything in one swing. But his real power won't be just raw strength or even the hammer itself. From what we see in the trailers, Shao Kahn is personally involved in battles. He doesn't sit on a throne and send others to do the dirty work. He fights. He personally hunts down and destroys his enemies. Just look at the scenes with Jerrod. Shao doesn't order the execution, he does it himself. That alone already tells us a lot about how he's being portrayed in this live-action version. He's not just a ruler, he's a warlord, a true emperor of Outworld who leads from the front, a hardened warrior who earned his position through violence. During casting, some leaked audition lines surfaced. These lines may not end up in the final cut, but they're still very telling. Actors auditioning for Shao Kahn weren't given simple evil villain phrases. The material was way more complex. There were balanced, layered speeches, including parts of dialogue with Kitana. In those lines, Shao openly expresses a kind of brutal social ideology. The strong rule, the weak submit. And if the weak submit willingly, the strong are obligated not to destroy them, but to control them. That mindset alone already pushes him into a more complex villain territory. If even part of this makes it into the movie, Shao Kahn won't just be a screaming final boss, he'll be a character with a worldview. I love this approach as a fan. It reminds me of how Thanos justified his snaps in MCU, but Shao's version feels grittier, more primal. And that's important because, like it or not, Shao is the main villain of Mortal Kombat 2, and very likely the overarching villain of the franchise going forward. There are already quiet talks about a third movie, but everything depends on how the sequel performs at the box office. Recent news from Warner Studios confirms they're greenlighting pre-production for a third film regardless, banking on the first movie's streaming success pushing past 200 million views on HBO Max. Still, make no mistake, even with Shang Tsung and Quan Chi in the picture, they're secondary players. In future films, they could absolutely form the Deadly Alliance, just like in the games, and that could eventually lead to an Onaga storyline. That's the kind of thing that could be teased at the end of a third movie or fully explored in a fourth, assuming the franchise gets that far. Right now, it's all potential, but the MK cinematic universe clearly has the scope to become a full cinematic universe. Spin-offs alone could fill years, like a solo Scorpion movie, for example. It all comes down to numbers and audience response. Because of that, Shao Kahn has to be more than a simple adaptation of his game version. In the games, especially the older ones, he works perfectly as a final boss archetype. He shows up, dominates, and you fight him. The movie can't rely on that alone. Yes, the film will be based on existing lore, but it also has to add something new. He can't just be a copy of Shao Kahn from MK11. He needs his own identity, his own flavor, something that justifies spending real screen time on him. That part is crucial. My take, they'll lean into his soul-stealing ability from the lore, but twist it movie style. In MK9, he absorbs souls to empower himself during invasions. Imagine a scene where he drains Jerrod's essence mid-battle, gaining temporary Edenian powers like enhanced speed, making him even deadlier against Earthrealm champs later. If we strip everything down to the basics, the story will most likely follow a classic structure inspired by the original games. MK2 from 1993 is the obvious backbone here. Shang Tsung loses the tournament, ends up back in Outworld, and is summoned before the Emperor. Shao Kahn initially wants to execute him for his failure, but Shang Tsung finds a way out by proposing a new plan. Lure the Earthrealm fighters into Outworld itself and destroy them there. That simple storyline could easily serve as the main engine of the movie. From there, the film can layer in elements from newer games like MK9, 11, and even recent Mortal Kombat 1. Leaks from an early script draft circulating on Reddit last month back this up, describing a portal trap in the second act that pulls Liu Kang and team straight into Shao's throne room for an ambush. Traditionally, in the lore, Shao eventually loses to Liu in the final battle, but the movie could easily change that. One of the more interesting rumors floating around suggests that Liu Kang might actually lose to Shao in the sequel, and that Johnny Cage ends up defeating him instead. If that happens, Karl Urban could become the main face of the movie franchise moving forward. That would be a massive shift, but for now, it's way too early to treat that as fact. When it comes to Shao Kahn's emotional core, his strongest connection is clearly with Kitana. She witnesses his invasion of Edenia. She sees her home fall. She watches her father, King Jerrod, die at the Emperor's hands. That turns her conflict with him into something deeply personal. It's no longer just about winning a tournament or stopping an invasion. It becomes revenge, very much in line with the games. On top of that, Jade enters the picture. Kitana's childhood friend who grew up alongside her also plays a key role. Jade is played by Tati Gabrielle, and we've already had our first look at her as well. Set photos leaked last week show Jade spying on Shao during the Edenia conquest, hinting she starts loyal to him as an assassin but defects after seeing Kitana captured. That dynamic could explode into a brutal betrayal scene, with Jade bow-staffing Tarkatans to free her friend. In the bigger picture, Shao functions almost like the Thanos of the Mortal Kombat films, a looming presence whose actions shape the entire universe. Even his origin in the games is intentionally vague and fragmented. There's no single clean backstory. What we do know from canon is that before becoming emperor, he served as a military advisor to Onaga. At the time, Onaga was simply referred to as the Dragon King, ruler of Outworld. As Onaga expanded his empire and conquered smaller realms, Shao watched and learned. When Onaga sought immortality to rule forever, Shao poisoned him and seized the throne for himself. That single act defines Shao Kahn more than anything else. He's not just a conqueror, he's a usurper. This backstory alone opens the door to future plotlines involving Onaga, the Deadly Alliance, and massive realm-shaking events down the line. Even if the movie doesn't go deep into all of this right now, the foundations are there. Director Simon McQuoid mentioned in a recent IGN interview that they're planting seeds for ancient Outworld threats, which screams Onaga tease. Other canon elements that could easily influence his movie version include his obsession with domination over annihilation. Shao doesn't just destroy realms for fun, he absorbs them. He wants control, resources, warriors, and power. His use of magic through others rather than himself also fits. In the games, he is powerful on his own, but he prefers to delegate sorcery to Shang Tsung and Quan Chi while focusing on conquest and warfare. He's also known for manipulating rules, bending tournaments, and finding loopholes rather than playing fair. That kind of political cruelty could translate extremely well to film. Another key trait from canon is his twisted sense of honor. It's brutal, but it exists. He respects strength, despises weakness, and believes mercy is something that must be earned through submission. That philosophy, if explored properly, can make him terrifying in a grounded, believable way rather than just a loud monster in armor. As a longtime MK fan, I theory-craft that Shao's invasion ties into the first movie's Elder Gods hints. Raiden's mural showed Shao with a crown-like aura, maybe symbolizing stolen god essence. What if he beat an Elder God off-screen to merge Edenia, explaining his confidence invading Earthrealm? It'd elevate him beyond brute force, making Liu Kang's win a true Godslayer moment. Or flip it, Shao wins, but gets betrayed by Shang, echoing the Deadly Alliance setup. So if the film really commits to all of this, Shao Kahn won't just be a big guy with a hammer. He'll be a fully realized tyrant, warrior, strategist, and symbol of Outworld itself. And if they get that right, he could easily carry not just this movie, but the entire Mortal Kombat cinematic future. Can't wait for May.